Hey there, it's your host, Cindy Chang, founder of Evolve Consulting Co. and the visionary behind an exciting new venture launching in 2025, making staffing accessible for companies of all sizes. Welcome back to the Fearless Entrepreneurs podcast, where we dive deep into the stories behind Canada's most inspiring brands. Together, we'll uncover how these bold entrepreneurs sparked their dreams, tackled their toughest challenges, and leaned into their fears to achieve success. I'm thrilled you're here, bold enough to embrace the hard truths and inspired to learn from their journeys. Ready to dive in? Let's go. We have a truly inspiring guest joining us today, Rebecca Rhectorik, the co-founder of Holistic ED Recovery Center. Rebecca, along with her co-founder, Jesse White, they have combined 20 years of experience in the field of eating disorder recovery. What's truly remarkable is that both Rebecca and Jesse have personally battled and overcome eating disorders, which makes their approach deeply empathetic and transformative. Rebecca's passion project, the Holistic ED Recovery Center, opened in 2024. It stands as a beacon of hope at a time when the need for eating disorder treatment has surged. With an astounding 305% increase in adolescent ED admission globally, the center is tackling this crisis by rethinking the way we approach recovery through personalized, holistic care that meets individuals where they are. Their story isn't just about overcoming personal challenges, but about those experiences to help heal others. No matter if you're an entrepreneur, a parent, or an individual navigating life's challenges, this story might help you impact or someone that you love. Rebecca's journey isn't just about building business, it's about transforming pain into purpose and creating hope for others. And her story is one of resilience, compassion, and the belief that healing is possible for everyone. Welcome to the podcast, Rebecca. How did that make you feel?
A little teary-eyed. You
You're
sound
fully in there. And it's so true. You come from such a deep journey that's tied to your business, which sometimes people can find amazing because you really have that note to help people, but it also is deeply within you as well. So tell us a little bit about that and how this journey started for you.
Let me just wipe my welcome tears.
Tears are always welcome.
I am quite an emotional person. So
I love that about you.
brace yourself, everybody. Just hearing you say it like that, I think sometimes when you're in the trenches, you don't always see the forest for the trees. So Thank you for all those lovely, really lovely things you just said. I appreciate that. Where do we start? How did I get from there to here?
Start at the very beginning.
I started to struggle with eating disorder when I was in grade 10. So I grew with it for many years. It was always there. And by the time I was in my late 20s, it finally clicked, getting better. And it wasn't until that healing started to happen that I could truly understand how it had held me back from so many opportunities, so much potential, so much courage. Like it was always something that just stole from me.
Yeah.
In ways that I didn't even know it was doing it until I came through the fog, I want to say. How did that become a business? When I was unwell, I had never, ever met someone who had recovered. I knew lots of people who'd gone through treatment. I knew lots of people who were doing therapy, but I'd never actually met someone who'd gone through and gotten to the other side, which is wild if you think about it.
Yeah.
And you think about statistically how many people struggle. How had I never ever been in front of someone who'd gone through successfully to the other side? And it actually became, I'm going to say, one of my whys while I was getting better was I'm going to show people, because I do have a bit of a stubborn streak. It's my blessing and my curse, depending on how I apply it. Where I was like, I'm doing this so that I can be the person who is an example that you can't get through this.
Right.
So on really hard days while I was getting better, that was something that I tethered myself to. There was a bigger reason for doing it.
Yeah.
Because I think you don't have to have lived that kind of life And I say this to parents all the time too, who say, I don't understand what my child is going through. You don't have to have gone through it to understand. As a human being, we have collective experience. Everybody knows what it feels like to be lonely.
Yeah.
Every single person knows what it's like to feel hurt or embarrassed or ashamed or sad or angry. These are collective experiences, regardless of what situation makes you feel that way. And being able to tap into the feeling, you don't necessarily have to understand the journey, but that feeling of hopelessness, which I think
It's in all of us.
it is in all of us.
Yeah.
It's such a soul-crushing, demotivating place. And I think we all need beacons of hope at various times in our life to know that the storm passes.
Yeah. It happens in waves.
In waves at various different times of your life.
Yeah.
You're going to be in storms. That's part of being alive, I think.
Yeah.
When you're in it, you can't always imagine not being in the storm.
Right.
But it will always pass. And it can be very helpful to have examples or mentorship or guides to help remind you essentially that the storm is not your forever. And often when things feel like everything is falling apart, it's actually just making space for what's to come.
I love that.
Thank you.
When everything is falling apart, it's making room and space for things that are to come. You said grade 10 was a pivotal moment for you. Was the eating disorder something that was always brewing inside, or did something happen in grade 10 that made you think, why are we pinpointing that moment in time?
It's a great question and something I reflect on a fair amount, actually. This is also something I hear people ask me, what caused this? Not about me specifically, but for themselves or their loved one. And it's a complicated answer because there's never one cause. Some people may have a trigger event, but something will already have been brewing internally
Inside.
that when that stimulus happens, this is the outcome that occurs.
Right.
I would say for myself, probably something always brewing in the background. And then in grade 10, we went through some big changes in my family. High school wasn't my favorite place to be.
Those that don't know, I actually went to high school with Rebecca in Vancouver.
It's wild.
And now we both live in Stony Creek, Ontario,
I know.
with 2 kids that are almost the exact same age. Wild, right?
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
I love how life works out, actually.
And you were new. I remember in high school, you had just moved from South Africa. Was it that change that was?
I think that was a contributing factor
Okay.
as well. Then my parents got divorced. My older brother moved out. The family system went through some massive upheaval at a time where these are really pivotal years in someone's development, right?
Yeah.
I think that was definitely massively contributing. And then there's the cultural aspect. We grew up in the era of nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. Kate Moss, we grew up in that heroin chic time.
Yeah.
I thank my lucky stars I didn't have social media in high school.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how much worse things would have been. But I think once it started, I never had the intention of, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to practice having an eating disorder.
Yeah.
It just evolved until I was living with this beast that I didn't even know was happening. I don't think anybody realized how serious it was at the time, that's not a knock against anyone around me, but
it happened so deeply and so quickly that all at the same time that it's really hard to pinpoint what that turning point was for you, right?
Yeah.
So you're going through a lot of change at that time. You had just moved. There were cultural changes. Was body image more of a cultural construct and pressure for you, or was it more within family that made you feel like you had to be a certain image?
It's a good question. I would say probably a bit of column A and a bit of column B, because I don't think that you can live, particularly in the West, without some form of internalization about cultural messaging about being a woman, being a good woman, right? Being an acceptable female. So I think as parents or just the people around me that were the guides, so parents, teachers, peers, we are all somehow conditioned to some of that thought process. And then, of course, it will inform our decisions and our behaviors. I never grew up in a home where someone said to me, like, you need to change your body. Yeah. But everyone around me was always doing that.
Right.
So you don't have to be explicitly told something.
Back in the day where our parents were in a generation where they were always on fad diets, they were going through body changes at very different stages of their life. But as a young person, you tend to internalize that. When did you discover that we have a problem here?
Took longer than I wish it had.
Okay.
There are a couple of years of my life that are a little bit blurry based on the intensity of how mentally unwell I was. So some things are a little blurry around the edges.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say in grade 12, I started to see a therapist.
Okay.
But I think at that time, everyone was more concerned that I was very depressed. And my very first therapist I went to was a male. So I'm a teenage girl going to see a male. He didn't get eating disorders. He used to bring a bag of brownies into session. Although there's still so much now that any kind of professional to really learn more about proper care and recognition of what's going on 20 plus years ago, no one knew. I think I always knew something wasn't right. But the interesting thing with eating disorder too, it kind of ebbs and flows. So there'll be periods of time where it's very acute and it's very obvious how bad it is, mostly because the behaviors ramp up a lot more.
Yeah.
And then periods of time where it'll almost feel like, oh, that's gone away. It hasn't gone away. It's lying dormant somewhere. Yeah. And maybe the behaviors are less, but the thought process is still very loud, but that's not tangible. I don't think I really recognized how big of an issue it was until I was probably about 25. And part of that was I didn't particularly look very sick, which is something that most people will deal with. And then I also had this idea that if I could just get all the pieces on my external life figured out, I would be okay. I didn't realize that I needed to be okay in order to figure out the other life things. If I got the right job, or you live in the right place, or you're in the right relationship, or you find the right workout or the perfect way to eat, whatever these external things are, if I could just get that formula right, then I was going to be okay. But as I say to everybody I work with, wherever you go, there you are. You can't escape from yourself. Wherever you are, there you are. If there's something within you that is a blockage, this stuff is irrelevant because your blockage is going to come with you to whatever else you're doing.
Right.
And then you wonder, why is my pattern repeating? Because I'm the common denominator, right?
And I feel like we all have patterns where we're trying to chase that level of control, right? And correct me if I'm wrong here. I think at that point where you were in high school, it started to get very intense because you had a lot of changes. And a lot of changes creates a lot of instability for that grounding that really adolescents need at that point in their lives. We all, as humans, I think inherently try to chase control in a moment where we feel out of control. So was that what it was for you? It was a lot of changes have happened. You moved from South Africa to Vancouver, BC, and you were trying to just find your footing, and it just got out of control.
I would say there's definitely an element of control. Not that I realized that at all. At the time. For familiarity, right? Familiarity breeds comfort, breeds security, breeds safety. I also think that I didn't know how to tell everybody that I was not okay.
Yeah.
So I showed them. Like, how bad do you have to be before someone notices something's not right here? I'm very good at pushing through. I'm very good at acting as if.
Yeah.
So I learned how to perform that everything was fine when it was not fine.
Right.
And so I think for me, particularly, a lot of those behaviors were also about just really trying to communicate to somebody I was not okay.
Interesting. And you just didn't feel comfortable, or you didn't have the vocabulary to say, I'm not okay. There's something wrong here.
Yeah.
And I need help.
Yeah.
Do you think it was more so that I've known you since you were in high school. You were soft-spoken.
Yep.
You were gentle, to say the least. You're not like that now.
No.
But did you feel like you couldn't say it or you didn't have the vocabulary to say it?
I think a bit of both. Probably more so on I didn't think I could because that's not okay. You're supposed to be thriving and you're supposed to be achieving. And what's interesting, again, that was never an overt message given to me. No one sat me down and said, you have to be happy all the time. Like that. But you just pick these perceptions up, right?
Yeah.
Like happy people are people who are getting ahead. And these are, again, subliminal messaging that I think don't just apply to me. I think most of us have that idea that I need to be okay. I need to look as if I've got it figured out.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, what does that mean about me? It doesn't mean anything, but most of us struggle with that idea of if I look like I'm struggling, what's wrong with me?
Yeah. And so how was that in your mind when you were feeling that and you were saying, I got to pretend as if everything is okay, but then also I have to signal the world that I'm not okay at the same time. Was that very confusing for you?
I can't say that there was any consciousness to it. There was a lot of dichotomy occurring. The way I was behaving versus what I was saying were completely at odds with one another. And I'm not sure if that's partially the adolescent brain. Our brains don't stop growing until we're 25. So in terms of cognition, even the healthy adolescent brain has some shortcomings, lovingly said. I can't say that there was any consciousness about it.
Yeah.
It's more so in reflection as an adult. On the other side of the journey, I can see
as you reflect back.
As I reflect. Nobody really wants to not be okay. Right?
And I think body image is one that's so easy to normalize as not normal in our culture. And I'm wondering if that's why a lot of young people are really gravitating towards body image as their form of control versus other things.
Body image is an interesting one because there is so much tied to it. We do live in a world where there is a very toxic and a very simplified idea of health and weight. It is not a myth that people in larger bodies are treated differently. That's not a perception. It is unfortunately a truth. At a time like in adolescence where you are desperately trying to fit in and be acceptable, which is a very normal phase of development, what is one of the easiest ways for you to stand out? Your image. Visual.
Yeah.
Right? Whether that's the shape of your body, the clothes you wear, but visually that's the most obvious thing to get either accepted for or not accepted for. And we have a very simplified idea of what it means to control your body. So if you're looking for control, I can change my body. If I do this plus this, there will be an outcome. Then you tie into it how much value as a society we put on appearance. My worth and my body become enmeshed very quickly. And I think particularly for young people today, where there's just such an inundation of what it means to look acceptable, how can you not at some point have those two things combined? I think it's actually as we grow and we get older and we learn the different values of life, which really can only come from living life.
Yeah, experience.
Right? It comes from experience that these things don't actually matter. The people who care about you care about what's inside the meat suit. It's not
inside the meat suit.
It's not the external, but those things come from experience.
Yeah.
And I think that body, so much insecurity gets projected onto the body because it is something that we're relatively able to control. When everything else is out to lunch, this thing I can do.
Yeah.
This is mine.
This is something I can physically control. And so as an expert in this field now, what are the different types of eating disorders that you do see? And what was your form of eating disorder?
So I'll answer your questions backwards.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Let's do this. No particular order.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I would say that my primary diagnosis was bulimia. That morphed into multiple different things over the course of its lifetime. as is true for most people, will never fit neatly into one diagnostic box.
For eating disorder
For eating
specific?
disorder.
Okay, got it.
Because it is actually a spectrum of behaviors. We may have a higher representation from one side or the other, but there are very few people who only ever do one
Just
brand
fit
of
one
eating
box.
disorder.
Interesting. So you're saying that there is actually, and that's something I didn't know, right? Is that I thought you would have one bulimia, anorexia, but you're saying that there's actually a spectrum.
Yeah.
Because a lot of contributing factors feed into whatever your diagnosis is.
So, for example, if I have somebody who comes to me with binge eating disorder,
Yeah.
and they want to stop binging, of course, what we very quickly uncover is, guess what? You're a restrictive eater. So people think my binging is the issue, but you're also restricting. You're exhibiting behaviors from the absolute other side of the spectrum too. And that's very normal. Most people will not fit neatly into one little box. The vast majority of people will never fit into a diagnostic box, actually. So when you ask what types of eating disorders are there are a variety of ones that fall into the DSM, which is the mental health guidebook for. There's obviously anorexia, there's bulimia, there's ARFID, which is becoming more and more recognized.
What's that?
ARFID is a restrictive eating disorder that can physically look a lot like anorexia, but it typically is driven by something different. It's usually to do more so with sensory and phobias. So a fear of maybe feeling sick, or I'm a textural difficulty that makes me not want to put certain food in my mouth, versus anorexia, which is about trying to control how much food I eat.
I understand. So one is more like texture-based, creating a phobia around how that food makes you feel, and that's called ARFID?
We have binge eating disorder, OSFED. It used to be called EDNOS, but it's essentially where most people will fall. I have an eating disorder. I exhibit symptoms from all of these categories, but I'm actually not one of those categories.
You're all of them.
So I might restrict, but I also might engage in compensatory behaviors like a purge, which is not anorexia, but I'm not strictly bulimic, but I also might do some binging. So I'm not in a diagnostic box. What am I? I'm clearly not okay. So there's that category. We see a lot more orthorexia, which is not formally recognized.
What's that?
So orthorexia is essentially taking health to an extreme. We see more and more as health, wellness. So this is maybe a little bit dark to say, but I think it was actually easier for me when I first developed an eating disorder, because you didn't have to be healthy and you just had to be thin. I knew the things that I was doing were not healthy. Whereas now I see a lot more people are doing very healthy things that are very unhealthy, which makes it harder to recognize that what I'm doing is hurting me.
That is what's really complex within what's happening, is because we normalize a lot of eating patterns, let's call it, when we're on a health kick, or when intermittent fasting was a lifestyle, when people are on keto. There's one thing to be aware of your health and diet, to be healthy. You're not like binge eating candy all day long. But then where is that line between it's too much?
Where I think we've intertwined morality and health. So people who are healthy are put on a pedestal. And so we chase that validation.
Yeah. And social media doesn't help that either.
Goodness. I would say you start to recognize that you're going too far. Health is never about extremes. Health should never, ever be black and white, because our health changes, our needs change.
Yeah.
So to say this is the way to be healthy, according to whom?
Yeah.
Does this person know you? We get so much health advice, but it's so general. How do I even know that's good for me? You don't even know how old I am, let alone anything else about me that would influence my health. Plus, I think we've made health very one-dimensional. We think about it as food, movement, body. All our pillars in our life either add to our health or detract from it. our social relationships, our sense of purpose in life, obviously the food we eat, the movement we get, the sleep we get, being unplugged.
Yeah.
So you can eat perfectly, but if I'm plugged into a screen all day, am I healthy?
And that's where your holistic part comes in. You have to look at the 360 of what's happening in and around what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So I want to come back to that because I think that is a very interesting topic. There are a lot of young people now, and I don't even want to say just young people. I think there are a lot of people now that are exhibiting signs of trending towards unhealthy eating behaviors. And so how do you identify someone that could be going through that? Because I see it a lot where they go down this path and I'm like, I don't know. Should I say something? Are they not ready to say something? What are the things that you can do to identify? And then what do you say to people who are going through that so that they feel the safe space to be like, okay, maybe I'm not okay?
It's complicated in the sense that no one really likes to have things pointed out. And now, in this case, speaking about adults, in order for any kind of change to happen in an adult life, they have to be the one who wants to change.
Agreed.
So I think, and this is very different if we're talking about youth versus adults, because if you don't mind, I'm going to separate the two. I think if you have an adult in your life and you're concerned, voicing it without making it feel shameful or making it seem like you have the answer, like you should do this.
Yeah.
Just to say something like, I noticed it looks like you're struggling and I'm here if you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But because there's so much shame associated with eating disorder and disordered eating, many people are not actually very receptive to having it pointed out. So I think coming at it from a more holistic standpoint of, looks like you've been going through a hard time. Can I help you with something? Or what's going on? I'm here. I will hold space for you if and when you're ready to talk about it. For the person themselves to be able to identify, the guidance I would give is how much time and space and energy is your relationship with food, body, and movement taking up in your life? How much anxiety do those choices bring up in you? If you don't do it a certain way, how guilty do you feel? Because health is supposed to enrich our life, not make us feel bad. So you could be eating blessed by virgins in the moonlight, quality, clean, organic food, but if doing that is making you super anxious, is that actually healthy? Relationship with food, in my opinion, is as important, if not more so, than the food you are eating. So what difference does it make if you're eating beautifully clean, but you're so anxious you can't go out? To me, that's not health.
How would you tackle it with youth?
Youth is a little bit different in the sense that as a child, whatever age that is, there will be times in your life where you need, I call it the external brain.
Yeah.
The adult brain.
Because you're not fully baked yet.
Because you're not fully baked.
Yeah.
Disorder or not, the teenage brain is not fully developed.
Yeah.
There are things that we need adult guidance through in order to get through them safely.
Right.
Right? There are times where you're a mom, I'm a mom, I have to tell my kid, you have to do it this way.
Yep.
You don't want to do it this way. I can see that.
Yeah.
But you can't do it that way. I'm sorry, I have some wisdom because I've been around.
Yeah.
And so I would say for parents, when it comes to youth, as a parent, trust your instinct. If you think something doesn't look okay, go and explore it. Okay. Talk to someone. Don't wait to see if it actually is not okay. Trust your instinct.
Right.
Because again, in today's world, so much disorder starts, so much of it, not all of it, and it looks very healthy. My child is working out more. They want to go to the gym more. They want to eat clean. They want to be vegetarian. Okay, but now they're skipping breakfast or they're cutting out fruit. Is this okay, or are they being healthy?
They're moving their food around their plate and not eating it.
What's normal, what's not? I would say always err on the side of caution. If it doesn't feel okay, explore it.
As a parent, how do you explore it?
I would very much encourage people to reach out to either groups or professionals who specifically understand eating disorders. And I would say this because it is a mental illness first that has physical symptoms. And I work through a holistic lens, which doesn't mean I'm anti-medical model. There's a time and a space where that is absolutely necessary. Yeah. But I want people to keep in mind the average GP gets 4 hours of nutrition training in med school. Total. Less than that on eating disorders. Yeah. So you're going to someone that you think is an authority on wellness who, through absolutely no fault of their own, is not an expert in what to look for. And we can go and we can have labs run, but that's tricky too, because the labs don't always tell you what's going on. There's a lot of people who are very unwell whose labs look pretty normal.
Because as you were saying, something that really stood out is that it's a mental illness first that's exhibited through physical symptoms. I think that is very striking. If you do a full panel, it's going to come out totally normal.
Very often we get that lab and we say, okay, then there's not a problem.
Yeah.
But it's a mental illness first. So if you are concerned or you're seeing things or even just a lot of change recently in your kids' behavior, talk to someone who specializes in eating disorder, because it's not a phase. It will not just go away on its own. They get more entrenched. The severity of the behavior is not necessarily an indication of how unwell the person is.
What is your perspective on, my daughter had bulimia or my daughter had anorexia or whatever diagnosis it was, but now she's okay? How do you feel about that? Is that something that you constantly have to work on for the rest of your life, like a lot of mental illnesses? Or do you think it's something that is overcomable?
Because there are two schools of thoughts about it. Many people think, much like addiction, once an addict, always an addict. I don't believe that, and I'll tell you a couple of reasons why.
Wait, you don't believe that for addicts, or you don't believe that for eating disorders?
For eating disorders.
Okay, got it.
Most eating disorders have concurrent disorders alongside depression, anxiety, OCD, other things. But when you're malnourished, how do you know if what you're experiencing is a result of malnourishment, or did it pre-exist the eating disorder and the eating disorder came in as a coping mechanism? No one can know that until you are fully nourished. Again,
chicken and egg situation.
Chicken and egg, absolutely. Okay. And food is medicine. That will always be the first stop, is until your body is physically well, we actually don't know what caused what. Recovery is a long process.
Yeah.
So I would say that people who are in recovery, that process can take many years, where you have to be very protective of it. You have to be very aware that I could slip, I could hit a bump, I could relapse. But for people who keep going, who keep doing the work, who keep protecting their wellness, like myself, as an example, I don't have to worry about relapse anymore. There is not one fiber of my being that thinks that could come up again. I do struggle with depression and I still struggle with anxiety. That's part of my makeup. And those things I have to be aware of. And how do I keep my mental wellness? But am I worried that those things will springboard into eating disorder again at this point? No. I would say that I am recovered. It's taken about a decade, if I'm being totally honest.
Yeah.
But it is not in any way something that I worry about coming back to. And I think that's a message of hope, right? I think that it's wonderful to know this can be something that is simply a chapter in your book.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be the story of your book.
I think, first of all, kudos to you for being recovered.
Thank you.
I don't think that we've ever taken time as friends to really sit down and celebrate that. I think I get what you're saying, too. You're saying that because mental health is so deeply entrenched and the eating disorder is the output or the result of mental illness unchecked.
Yeah.
Whereas if you as a human being focus on the mental illness part of it, which I think that's why we see a lot of that surging, because a lot of people suffer from anxiety, suffer from depression. So if you take care of that element of it, the result and the output shouldn't be your eating disorder anymore. Is that right?
Yeah, it really shouldn't be. You should have different healthy ways
to cope. That was just such a light bulb moment for me. And I agree with you, is that in the back of my head before our conversation was always like, if you had an eating disorder, you're battling with it your entire life. But you actually have to take a step back, and it's the mental illness part that you have to, and I don't even want to call it a mental illness, but it's the mental protection that you have to protect your mental well-being.
Yeah.
That's the most important part. That can siphon into a lot of different things. OCD, eating disorders, a lot of different things catapult from anxiety and depression.
Absolutely. And if you think we're talking about eating disorder, but this is life, we spend so much time, particularly I would say in the last 15, 20 years, of really prioritizing physical health. And we do talk about mental health and protecting it, but I don't actually think we do a great job as a society of really making sure that we are protecting our mental health with the same fever and verve that we go after our physical health.
Yeah.
We tend to do something with our mental health when it declines versus how do I keep it well? When we struggle with our mental health, that then plays into all kinds of other things, our thought process, our story of self, our self-talk, our ability to be resilient in life, our self-trust, our self-efficacy. I think that a lot of people who feel like they're battling their eating disorder for a long time, there's elements of their mental wellness that haven't been addressed. Let's
go back to your journey a little bit. You're in your 20s now when it hit an all-time low for you. And I want to focus on the redemption part. In order for you to recover, you really had to hit that part. What was that like for you leading up to that moment? What was happening in your life? You had a successful job. You had a successful career. You look from the outside like it was all buttoned up and all put together. What was happening on the inside?
It's funny, right? Going back to that idea that if you have everything externally figured out, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, quite the opposite.
I've never been so unwell as when my life on paper looked really quite good.
Yeah.
Had a great apartment. I had a great job. I had relationship, all these wonderful things. I wasn't living my dream. I was just living what I thought you were supposed to do. When I hit that rock bottom moment, basically I got kicked off of my life, and everything at the time, it didn't feel like it at all, but it was the greatest opportunity I ever had because I got to rebuild my life with intention around what do I want? How do I want to feel in my life? Not what looks good in my life to other people. How do I actually want to feel in my life? That was the starting point. And then everything worked backwards from how do I want to feel in my life? Does this support that feeling?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, I'm not doing it. So there's some blessings, as odd as it sounds, to having these horribly complicated moments in your life where everything falls apart. It's going to make space for what's to come. New things can't come in if everything is full.
Wholeheartedly, I believe that.
Right. You see that in business too.
You see that in relationships. Can't have one foot out and one foot in. It's in everything, right? It's energy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't know it at the time. I really was very resentful about the fact that I was going through this. It didn't feel fair at all. But I look back and it would have been nice to learn the lesson a different way. But this is the way I got the lesson.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful. Otherwise, who knows? I could have woken up at 50 and spent most of my life desperately unhappy and unwell, but doing, quote unquote, all the right things.
What was that moment, take us back in time, where you had to pull the plug? Like you knew you were not okay?
It wasn't so much a moment that I thought. It's a moment that happened where I didn't want to be here anymore. I was very suicidal and I acted on that. And I'm very fortunate. It was not a permanent decision in my case. And so I would say that it wasn't even my choice at the time to say, okay, it's time for change.
Yeah.
The choice was made. It was either change or you're probably not going to be here for much longer. I think at that time I was so tired that I was like, if that's the choice, decide which way you want to go and commit to it. And I decided I've tried everything else. So for the first time, I'm actually going to do this.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say yes to everything when it comes to recovery.
Yeah.
Whether I understand it, no matter how it feels, I'm just going to experiment. Because if it doesn't work, I know how to live like that. I can do that again.
Yeah, but you don't want to.
I don't want to, but I know how. What do I have to lose? Literally nothing.
I think that your experience is definitely something that led you down a very specific path that not everyone with an eating disorder or mental illness go through, but you went down that path that brought you here today.
Yeah.
And so flipping that into, okay, I surrender and I get help, whatever form help comes in, I'm going to unplug, reset, redefine.
Yeah.
And now you turned that chapter or that pain into your business. And so how has that been for you? Is it therapeutic or is it triggering?
I would not do this work if it was triggering. And I think that's very important. I do this work because it's not triggering for me. It is safe for me to do this.
Interesting.
Again, coming back to that idea of creating a life to support how you feel. If doing this work brought me back to that chapter, I couldn't do this. I do this work because I don't think anyone should live like that. You're in a prison, have been in the prison, and I do not think anyone ever, no matter what kind of person you are, ever deserves to live like that. And it's so cool to watch people get well.
Transform. Yeah.
It's like the most one, like selfishly, it's so rewarding.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I always wanted to have purpose.
Yeah.
And it's took me going through all of that to find my purpose was something very different than what I imagined purpose was supposed to look like in my 20s. That's why I do this. I think it's a privilege to work with people to help them get well, to show them that you don't have to live like this. This is not actually your forever.
You don't have to be stuck in this chapter.
It's so cool to watch people have like aha moments or to start doing something differently or recognize their patterns that get in their way of thriving in life. That's so amazing.
Yeah.
Right?
Finding their wow moment.
Yeah.
So at what point in your recovery or your healing were you like, this is going to be my business? Let me start defining what that looks like. Because you have the holistic eating disorder recovery center now, but you've actually been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
Right? So at what part in your journey are you like, I'm going to try to help as many people as I can and make this into what I do for a living?
I got well, and then I went back to the job that I had left because I thought you got better so you could do your life. I hadn't been back in for, I don't know, maybe a month, and I started to feel icky again. And I was like, this isn't going to work for me.
Yeah.
So I used to work in sales and advertising. I was good at it.
Yeah.
But just because you're good at something doesn't mean it's good for you.
Yep.
So I had to learn that lesson twice. And then at that point, I had a social worker that I was seeing who I don't know, there was something about this woman that I wanted to be just like her. She was the most amazing support, the most amazing guide. And I was like, I want to be you. The way you make me feel, I want to do that for other people. And I still didn't know what that was going to look like, but I went back to school.
What did you take in school?
Social work.
Okay, because you were like, this woman's amazing. She's a social worker. That's what I'm going to try.
And then I did a practicum at a not-for-profit that supported eating disorders, which was amazing. And I was like, I know this. Like, there's lots to learn, but this I know. Yeah. I know this stuff. Mm-hmm. At least I know what it's like to be in it. And then I started thinking and talking to people coming through the community, the not-for-profit, Danielle's place. And the big thing was, how do we get care? There's so little care. It's so hard to find care. It's so hard to access it. That's where I want to be. How do I provide another option, another space for people to come to? Because there's so much need. And it's been an iteration. It's been a 10-year journey of where I started to where I am. Constant evolution, as we know, with life, work, health, business. The one constant in life is change. You can never get stuck to one thing because it will change. And I think it's just been a constant evolution based on the people that I've worked with professionally and from the client side, hearing what people need and then evolving the business to really support the need.
It was a journey where you felt you just led through your heart on what people needed and found that there was a big gap within our system, which is a whole different topic altogether. with a surge like you were talking about, a 305% increase with people that have early signs or signs of an eating disorder.
That's actually not about signs, that statistic. That's hospital admission. If you think that's people who are unwell enough to be admitted to a hospital, what about everybody who is not?
That is scary. And so how do people find you, and what does your program look like now, and what is it that is your joy in your program of helping people?
Now, our primary focus is actually healing family systems. We work with youth and their families to facilitate recovery at home. There's lots of reasons we do it like that. Home is a protective factor. It's a safe place. One of the things that we were talking about, seeing what's out there and evolving the business to meet the need, hospital treatment is important and very valuable for a lot of people. And it is a short snippet of time that interrupts symptoms. But guess what? When that person is released, where are they going? Home, where the illness grew in the first place.
Yeah.
And I want to be very clear when I say that does not mean the family is at fault. But it does mean that in that environment, as it was, the eating disorder existed.
Yeah.
So if we don't work on healing the home and being able to facilitate recovery in that environment, what's the longevity? You're going to hospital, come back, be in the same environment, the same dynamics with the same everything. Guess what's going to happen for most people? So our joy, our passion is helping families get well together.
That's so powerful. And within that journey, what's important is that you're impacting youth, which you want to nip it in the bud before they go into the world and it becomes a bigger systemic issue. So you're healing the family, right? Which I think is so powerful. And I think it's absolutely the right thing to do, working with the family unit. But something that you said is that it's not the parents' fault per se, but that is the birthplace of where this unhealthy thinking began for said youth, right? So how do you help parents separate the guilt and the shame from what's actually happening? Because as a parent, if this happened in my household, I would be like, what did I do?
What did I do?
And you don't fully know until you're a parent. You just feel guilty about everything.
Oh my gosh. It's exhausting sometimes.
It's exhausting. How do you separate the two? You add an additional layer of emotional complexity. Now you're dealing with emotional parents that are constantly thinking it's their fault.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they're not contributing factors, because I'm sure they are. So how do you navigate that?
The first thing I would say to any parent is there is still a woeful lack of research about what actually causes an eating disorder. Essentially, what we like to say is genetics loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger. A person genetically will be born with certain predisposition, and that can be personality traits. There is a genetic component. They're finding out about anorexia, but having those markers doesn't mean you will get the illness.
Right.
It just means you are at a higher probability of developing one. Then something has to stimulate those genetic markers. That's the environment. That's what pulls the gun. It's not fault. Something in the environment, whatever came together to create a perfect storm that happened to trigger what was already in there.
Fascinating.
I think about this just as a parent myself, raising my kid. It's something that I talk a lot about with parents when you're trying to separate the guilt. And I'm talking about healthy parents, okay? So this is not about toxic or abusive or neglectful homes.
Different
We're not
category.
talking about that.
Yeah.
We are talking about the vast majority of parents. We are always all trying every single day to do our very best by our kids. So our intention comes from a good place. What we have to be mindful of, and what is like the catch-22 of parenting, no matter what our intention is, we cannot know the impact until we see our decisions play out. I can intend to do something with absolute love. What impacts my child, I'm not going to know until it's impacting my child. I see what's happening because of my decision. And where we want to get to when we're talking about the family work is it is not up to any one person to tell another person what the impact is, because that's a personal experience.
Because everyone has different external contributing factors.
I cannot tell my kid that the impact is going to be this. I have no idea. I know what my intention is. I'm not you. As much as you're basically my mini carbon copy, if anyone's ever seen my kid, she is a mini me.
She is.
And there's a lot of similarities, but she's still not me. How she internalizes, how she works through things, the emotional responses she has to things.
Different than you.
It's different than me. And so when we're working through healing the family, it's about allowing the child to say this was the impact and the parent working on not being defensive about the intention. I can say the intention was well meant, and I have to hear you when you say the impact didn't land in the way I was intending it to. And I'm sorry. How can we move forward? What can we do differently so that despite my intention, what we're actually looking for is what is the impact on you? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if we get stuck in guilt and what did I do and what difference does it make?
It's unproductive. You stay in a stuck zone.
We are where we are. We need to move forward. And as much as everyone wants to know the why, because I think that's just human nature, we want to have everything figured out all the time. Yeah. For some things, there are no clear whys. Even if you know the why, you still have to recover. Knowing the why doesn't mean everything gets fixed. Like you still have to work forward. In our center and the way that we work with families is less about the why this happened and more about how do we move forward?
I think something that you said is really true is that we're obsessed as a culture with trying to understand the why. And although that's an important factor of it, a lot of the time it allows us to stay stuck where we are because we're so fixated on trying to figure out. Sometimes you can't pinpoint, right?
And I'd say actually in life, there isn't a nice, neat little soundbite that says, this is the moment.
This is the turning point. That would be nice, though.
Oh my gosh, wouldn't it?
But it doesn't happen like that. Everything always happens slowly and then quickly all at once.
Yeah, and nothing is so simple as one thing. Everything is a system. So if something happens over here, it's going to affect this system, which is then going to affect this system. So the why, I think, when you talk about recovery, from going from being in recovery to being recovered, do the why work later. Do it when you're well, like when you're physically well, when your resiliency with life and how to manage the difficulties and the ups and downs and the joy and the chaos and the confusion and the happiness and all these beautiful things that life is, then go have at her. I'm still figuring stuff out. I'm still figuring stuff out about myself.
Yeah.
And
it's a never-ending journey.
It's never ending because every time something new happens and I have an experience with it,
you change.
Then I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder, let's shine a light on that. Let's understand it more. Yeah. But I'm well. Yeah. I have the luxury of time. I don't have to have myself all figured out because you never will, actually. Life is life. You're growing all the time.
Change is the constant.
Change is the constant.
And so with you protecting your mental wellness, what are the things that you need to do for yourself to stay in that state of mental wellness?
It's a great question and one that's actually constantly evolving.
Yeah.
But I will tell you for now, and these have all been learnt by hard lessons.
Yeah.
Apparently, I'm a very slow learner in life and have to do everything on difficult mode in order to learn the lesson. So a couple of things that I know, some are practical and some are more theoretical.
Okay.
On a practical standpoint, sleep is my number one protective factor.
Gosh.
My absolute number one protective.
Yeah.
If there is not one other healthy habit I have time, space, money for, sleep. Everything happens when you're sleeping.
Yeah.
My family has some choice words about what they call me at home about sleep, but I am protective of it.
Yeah.
I do not stay up late. I do not doom scroll at night.
Yeah.
I don't even have, my phone sleeps in the kitchen. It's not even in my bedroom.
Good.
No distractions.
Yeah.
Except a husband, a child, and a cat, but that's, can't put them in the kitchen.
But very healthy habits.
That is one I just very firm because I've learned the lesson many times.
Yeah.
That I don't function without sleep.
Yeah. And as you get older, that doesn't get easier.
No, it does not. Your spring back capacity is not the same. Sleep for me Being unplugged is a very big one for me too. It's always a challenge, I think, particularly in today's world as a business owner too. Everything's online. You're doing client calls online. You're advertising online, your Instagram, your socials. It's just constantly plugged in.
Yeah.
And I think being aware of what you consume, as in your diet, being everything you consume, not just the food you eat. I have a business Instagram. I post and I leave.
Yeah.
I don't go look at other people's business Instagrams because guess what it does to me? It gives me imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Oh, they're doing it this way. Should I pivot? Should I do it? I know
You need
what
to
works
focus.
for me.
Yeah.
I don't need noise.
Yeah.
I don't need noise.
Fair
When I need
enough.
guidance, I will seek it out.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you're always wondering, am I doing it the right way?
Yeah.
Theoretically, and this one has taken me a very long time to learn. And I'm going to say I'm still sometimes fall into the trap. Not everything can be a priority at the same time. It just can't. You cannot do everything well simultaneously. So I pick based on seasons, what is happening in my life,
Yeah.
what needs to be a priority. And I will typically have 3.
That's what I say too. You can
Right.
only do 3 things really well, or you can do 10 things unwell.
And so depending on the phase of life I'm in, those priorities ebb and flow. They shift.
Yeah.
You cannot do everything. You will burn out. You will feel like you are failing. You will not make any progress. You will always feel like you have 10 billion tabs open mentally,
Yeah.
which means you're never present for any of the things you're doing because you're thinking about what's the next thing on my list.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I'm not just talking about business. My physical health is a pillar, but it's not one that can always be my highest priority.
Yeah.
My child, because we're in early years, she will always right now be one of my top 3. Then it's business. Sometimes that is an absolute priority. Sometimes I got to let it flow because something else needs to take up a little bit more space
Yeah.
at that given time, right? My relationships, sometimes those are an absolute priority and sometimes they can't be my number 1.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean these things aren't important.
It just has to be pulsed out
It has to be pulsed out.
differently, right?
Right? You got to put some things down
Yeah.
because once you have made something a priority and you've done it with the intention of this is my focus, you tend to be able to get some flow out of it for a while, which
Yeah.
means something else then can be reprioritized until this thing needs to come back as the main focus. So that's my wellness.
I really like that a lot. I heard something yesterday where for business owners to truly develop and evolve in their ideas, sometimes they just got to take a step back.
Oh my gosh, I'm the biggest believer in that ever. You
Yeah.
cannot see the forest for the trees.
We are conditioned to just keep hitting that wall. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. But sometimes you actually gain more clarity once you take a step back and you can see the bigger picture.
Business, life, health, one of our philosophies is there is power in the pause.
Power in the pause.
You have to stop
Yeah.
to be able to see. I was reading this article recently. Some scientists did an experiment in California with the redwoods. These trees are hundreds of years old.
Yeah.
And they did an experiment where they gave the trees adrenaline. So basically to keep them awake all year round, they
Yeah.
didn't fall into hibernation. So these trees, hundreds of years, they've been alive. Within, I think it was like less than 5 years of being awake all year round, they were dying.
Yeah, because they were probably burnt out and they were like, what is happening? That's so interesting.
And then you think about how we operate in the modern world.
Yeah.
It's always go, go, go. We think
always
that
on.
unless you're having output, it's meaningless.
Yeah.
But you cannot have output without pause.
I love that.
Thank you.
That is an aha for me today. Now, I have a really big question for you. Do you feel like eating disorders affect more females? Males or equal? Or you don't know the data?
The data has some holes in it
Of
because
course.
historically it's been thought of as a female-centric problem.
Yep.
We are starting to see more research around how it affects males. And it generally doesn't affect them in exactly the same way. It looks different. So the data is showing that it is rising rapidly within the male population. But to what extent? We don't even know how many women it affects. The data says probably 1 in 6 Canadian women will struggle in their life. But that would mean that somebody noticed it, it was diagnosed, and it was put into a study.
Yeah.
What about everybody that falls outside that purview? We have no
Yeah.
idea. You can walk into a room, if you start talking about this topic, I guarantee you, everybody knows somebody. To some degree, everybody knows somebody, which is tragic.
And overwhelming. But I find that question so fascinating because what I learned about today's session is that it is heavily intertwined with mental health. And mental health is not just a woman's problem.
No, it is not.
It is very rapidly growing into a man's problem too. Mm-hmm. And with the constant demands of social media and that strive for health or looking a certain way, I'm sure it impacts men greatly too.
Oh, absolutely. Again, though, you think about if we're talking about like body construct, men and women have very different beauty ideals, right? So
Yeah.
men be bigger, be stronger, be this. And I know I'm generalizing, so please give me some latitude here. Women be thinner,
Skinny.
have curves in the right places, so it can manifest in the outside looking very different.
Yeah.
But again, if you come back to it's a mental illness first, is the
Yeah.
thought process similar?
Which it is.
Which
right?
it is.
What do you call it? Inside the
meat
sack?
The meat suit. This was something I had to develop for myself, was how do I separate myself from my body? I am
Yeah.
not my body.
Yeah.
It is the vessel that
Carries you.
But it literally is just a meat suit.
Yeah.
If I could unzip it, who I am. When you go to a funeral, no one's talking about what someone's body looked like at the end of the day.
Meat suit. Love it.
They're talking about who was inside.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
stuff that matters.
Absolutely. Okay, so to wrap it up, I like to get to know your CEO rapid fire questions.
Oh,
if you
boy.
know me in my podcast, are you a coffee or a tea person?
Coffee.
I know. First thing you came in, you're like, coffee. Yeah, it's great.
It's glorious.
Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Definitely an introvert.
What's one word that describes your journey?
Turbulent.
Very strong word.
It has been turbulent. That's not necessarily a bad
No.
thing. Headwinds make you strong.
I love that. That is a zinger right there. You're just full of zingers.
Must be the coffee.
Must be the coffee. What's one thing you can't live without?
Nature.
Rooting yourself. I love that. Oh, this is a good one. So when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be an actor, actually. I wanted to be famous.
As an introvert, that's weird. And also, that's how our paths really crossed. We met in a theater program in high school.
That's right.
Lord Bing Thico. And you were so shy.
Yep. But I love to perform.
You're Sasha Fierce. Got it. What is your most used emoji?
I have a 3-year-old at home, so it's the poo emoji. It really is. I hate to admit it. Sometimes it's literal.
Poop.
Sometimes it's figurative, but anyone who has a toddler understands.
Yeah, I get it. We're moving out of that phase, but still most of the time. And what's your favorite way to relax after a long day?
We are very lucky. We have a beautiful space
Yeah.
outside. We
Yeah.
put our phones down and we go and we sit outside. That's it. I love to be outside. I love to be unplugged. It's this weird dichotomy of living in such a connected time.
Yeah.
But the thing I crave the most is
Quiet.
disconnect.
Yeah. I love that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Rebecca, for sharing your journey and your business. I think it's going to impact so many people, and just how much I've learned today about what I didn't know. So thank you so much. You can find Rebecca on her website, the Holistic ED Recovery Center, which we'll link in the show notes. She's on Instagram, but only to post. Don't expect her to answer you right away. Facebook, as well as LinkedIn. We'll link that in the show notes as well. And if anyone wants to book a free consultation, we'll also put that in the notes as well, where you can book a one-on-one time with you just to see what the next steps would be.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Cindy, for having me.
I'm so glad you joined us today for the Fearless Entrepreneurs podcast. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend or someone who could use a little inspiration. You can always reach me, your host, Cindy Chang, directly on Instagram or Spotify DM. I love hearing from you. Don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a review. It truly means the world to me. Until next time, stay fearless.